Howdy, everyone. Welcome to Narrative Dissonance on Unsafe Space. Today is Monday, April 18th. It's tax day. So this is the day where you verify to your thugs how much of your lunch money they're taking. My name's Carter. You're watching Narrative Dissonance, which is a show where we question the mainstream narrative. You can always watch us at unsafespace.com. That's where we recommend you watch us. We have embedded live stream there and all of our old episodes there. But if you want to be on YouTube, Odyssey, Utreon, Rumble, maybe somewhere else I'm forgetting, we're all those places as well. And you can follow us on Twitter at _unsafespace. Don't forget to share this with a friend. If you like any of the content we do on Unsafe Space, please just go hit the subscribe button, share it with a friend. You can share it secretly. It's okay. You don't have to do it publicly. And one last reminder before we start, our book club, our next book for book club is the book club will be hosted by Thomas St. Thomas, who was just on Token Minority Report last Friday. And the book is The Gulag Archipelago, the abridged version, which actually isn't that bad. I was very intimidated because the full set of Gulag Archipelago is huge. And I was a little bit intimidated, but the abridged version actually isn't that long, and it's easy to read. So you still have time to read it before May 1st, and I think that will be an excellent discussion, partly because it's just an excellent, insightful, and chilling book. All right, on with the show. So today we've got two panelists. One of them is new to the show. You haven't seen him before. We'll introduce him first. His name is John Sullivan. He was born and raised in North Central Florida and found himself orphaned by the time he was 11, which is just heartbreaking. Facing down poverty and abuse, Mr. Sullivan made a decision at a young age to turn his life over to knowledge. Now, as an adult, he shares his unique perspective on poverty, race, and the political regimes of our time. He's currently a staff writer at Wrong Speak Publishing. You can follow him on Twitter at Mr. Sullivan96. That's Mr. Sullivan96. Welcome, John.
Hi, Eric. Nice to hear from you, brother. Nice to be on.
Good to have you.
Absolutely.
And our second guest is someone you guys will all recognize. It's some bitch I know, Elle, aka Elle. Many of you know her as the relentless researcher behind Some Bitch Media and the personification of its tagline, "Cite your sources or get the F out." She's helped explode mainstream narratives around the COOF, the 2020 election, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and other issues you've seen her on Unsafe Space before and around the interwebs. You can follow her on Gab at SomeBitchIKnow. Elle, welcome.
Surprise! It's me.
Surprise.
I never have a good way to introduce myself, so surprise works.
That's as
jazz
good
hands.
as any.
Thanks for that very kind introduction. Happy to be here. Good old Mondays. It was okay. Honestly, it was
there's just a dog going on. That's okay.
Hey, dogs have a lot to say, you know. It was a good weekend. It was restful. Played some Elden Ring. Still suck at that game, and had Easter lunch.
One moment. I'm gonna go.
Tell your dog. Tell your dog I said bark. And had some. Spent Easter with my family yesterday, so it was a good time overall.
Good.
Yeah.
Well,
I bagged up a bunch of clothes to take to to donate, and I still haven't done that yet. So anybody who is who's like me, who decides that they're going to donate a bunch of clothes and then drives around with it in the trunk of their car for the next 3 months. I'm currently in the driving around with it in the trunk of my car phase. So
I do that all the time.
It's a step in the right direction at least, but it's like.
Yeah,
you know.
But I do that all the time.
Baby
And
steps.
do you guys have this problem where you are in the Bay Area? You can go to a Goodwill and they'll say "Oh, we're not taking clothes donations now," and you have to wait for them to say yes. So you drive around and you stop by every few weeks in your car, and eventually they'll be like, "Yes, right now we're taking donations." It's like, all right, thanks.
Well, once it's out of my house, even if it's in the car, I feel like I've already made a good step. There are a few different shelters around my area that I like. One of which actually supports it's a men's shelter, which
Unusual.
It's unusual, right? Which is why I like to support them. But otherwise, there's a place where you can just go dump them in like a like a Dropbox for. I'm sure it all ends up in a landfill anyways, but it makes me feel better that at least there's potentially the chance for the stuff to be taken in. But anyways, that's not a very exciting thing, but that's been my weekend.
That's okay.
Elden Ring and donating clothes.
Well, someone in chat says you're okay at Elden Ring. I don't even know what Elden Ring is, so it sounds like
it is a game where you run around and you try to stab stuff with swords and stuff and whatnot. It's I'm terrible at it actually, but
she's giving
it's
you
fun.
a nice description. It's depression.
It's depression.
Oh yeah, it's just dying a lot over and over again to a lot of really big enemies. Have you ever heard of Dark Souls?
No.
I never played it.
It's a game series by the same company. They're ultra aggressive, and that's their whole shtick. They're really hard to beat.
Yeah, I skipped the entire tutorial at the beginning because I didn't realize that it was a tutorial, and so I ran out into the overworld and promptly got curb stomped like a bunch. And I was about to rage quit. I was playing on stream, so it wasn't a good look. It wasn't my best moment because I was looking quite annoyed. And then someone's like, "You skipped the tutorial," and that kind of helped. But I still have died a lot, so it's good times.
Oh, sounds like every game I play, I die a lot.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's jump into something not related to video games, or maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe since Elle, you've been here already, we'll put John in the hot seat first.
All right.
What's the most important story, John, about which the mainstream media has been misleading people in the last week? What do you think?
They've been misleading people. Oh, it has to be Ukraine. It has to be this entire war in Ukraine. I mean, that's the most important, but that's the clear one at the front. I think the Twitter issue has also been very misleading.
John froze.
Oh,
he's back. He's intermittent. What's misleading about the Twitter story?
They're focusing on Musk versus board, but they aren't paying attention to all the other buyers that are beginning to rumble around the issue. There are Saudi Arabians who are interested in the company. There are a few other Americans that are interested in the company. It could drive the price up a lot, and I'm not sure that this will result in Elon actually buying the company. I think Twitter might just become more powerful.
That's not the answer I wanted. I don't. That doesn't sound good, John.
It never does, but feels like the reality. He offered up $42 billion.
Yeah, he did, but so this is interesting. Twitter's actually not that valuable. I mean, his offer was a substantial premium to the value of the company, which isn't unusual to do. I think in takeover world, that's called a bear hug, right? Where you give them a price that's just, it should be big enough that they can't avoid giving it to shareholders, and then shareholders are like, yeah, this is great, and you basically can't get out. But I think we're seeing the difference between how people, like, a lot of people complain about capitalism being about money and shareholders just caring about money. But I think what we're seeing is both on Elon's side and also on the dark side, that this isn't really about money for them. They don't care how overvalued it is. They don't want to lose control of the narrative. And that's why you're seeing people like that Saudi, I guess he's royalty, but he's like a low Al-Walid bin Talal. He runs a fund, and Vanguard and a bunch of people like that. That's why you see them rejecting this, not for financial reasons, but for, I guess, woke reasons.
Maybe power is the accurate answer. If you look at Blackgate and Vanguard's finance, BlackRock and Vanguard's finances, they're invested in a number of other companies. If you control such a major legitimate social media platform, because Facebook's really not considered legitimate anymore. You can post anything on Facebook and no one considers that to be factual anymore. But you pull tweets are cited in news reports all the time. You see it from CNN.
Uh-oh. Did he cut out for you too? Oh, no.
Yeah, he did cut out for me, but he's
Okay.
back. He's once in a while, the tech overlords just mute him.
Yeah. So.
I think you're back. You're saying
They're
you're
onto
seeing
you.
Twitter get cited in CNN and other articles and stuff.
They're used as a legitimate news source for everything, every type of news media out there, whereas Facebook, Instagram, these other platforms don't have that power. So a company that's invested so broadly, being able to use that power, they can boost any of the other companies they own, or they can tank a rival company in the same process.
I just thought of this. Maybe should we look it up unless you guys know? Vanguard, I assume, owns a bunch of Pfizer shares, right?
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head. I could back check for you if you'd like.
I'm just looking up. Vanguard Group is currently the largest shareholder with 8.1% of shares outstanding. So Vanguard is a large shareholder of Twitter, and they're a large shareholder of Pfizer. So Twitter is it's like controlling the platform that will control the narrative that will affect your portfolio. That's just one example of a company that they own. But
to play devil's advocate here, I mean, BlackRock controls over $7 trillion worth of assets, trillion with a T. So the amount of things that they're going to be involved in is a lot more widespread than just a few different companies. I mean, it's just about damn near everything. So you're going to have investments in pharma. You're going to have investments in social media and communications platforms. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a good thing, but I'm sure they've got assets in all sorts of manner of things that, we could sit here and draw a Venn diagram all day, but it just end up being a circle of just all the things they're involved in.
No, that's a good point. They have the largest portfolio. They control the most money.
Trillion, 7 of them.
Yeah. So that's a good point. However, let me play devil's advocate. Let me play angel's advocate back at you, which is
reverse card me right here. I like it.
Well, I mean, if you do have $7 trillion in assets, wouldn't you care a lot about narratives that could affect the value of your assets? And wouldn't you make sure that for example, if you had a large percentage of Twitter and sat on the board, wouldn't it be a priority to make sure that the narrative wasn't hurting any of your other businesses, your main investments? I mean,
that was the whole point that was made the other day. I can't remember who it was who originally kind of posted the discovery that the majority of the board members, other than Jack Dorsey, who is leaving the board next month, I think Jack owns about 2.3% of Twitter, and the rest of them own, I think, collectively a little over 70 shares, like in total. So they're not really financially tied to the decisions they're making about Twitter on the board there. But also, I think that to reverse your Uno reverse, when you manage assets worth $7 trillion, whereas, if when I get canceled, it affects my income significantly immworthly when something goes poorly for someone an entity that controls $7 trillion worth of assets. That's just the name of the game. You're going to have appreciating and depreciating assets constantly. I don't like Twitter is nothing on the grand scheme of things. It's absolutely nothing for BlackRock and Vanguard. It's nothing. It's literally nothing.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that monetarily. I don't know that I still don't know if I agree that it's nothing for them from a power perspective.
Oh, for sure, but as far as actually financially hurting them, there's really no such thing.
Oh yeah, no, they don't care about finance. The value could triple and they would be happy, or cut in half and they would be happy. They don't care. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
The poison pill.
Which kind of brings up Musk's offer. It won't matter how much he actually offers; they will always be opposed to it because the offer offers them will greater than any financial incentive that they'll gain from it. There are times where people have reported it doesn't run profitably within the actual company, but that really doesn't matter to any of the investors. You look at the NBA. The NBA is always Twitter. You have 10 million people talking about it at any time. If you can have any platform that garners 10 million people in discussion, that's an endless amount of power at any given time. You can accomplish a lot of things. But we see what Joe Rogan does with 12 million viewers with his shows, and they immediately attempt to take him down anytime he brings.
Yeah. Yeah, you're also seeing like, I find this fascinating. Here, I'm gonna share this article with you because I just saw this morning, and it was like the man, they're showing their hands at this point. They're so they've stopped pretending. So suddenly they're upset about one person. Hey, the amount of data Elon Musk would have access to if he privatized Twitter cannot be compared to anything that has ever existed. Report. So this is, I mean, we're already in a world where Alphabet owns like everything piece of information. If you add Alphabet, Zuckerberg, I mean, Twitter's nothing. They own a hell of a lot of information. And we're also in an era where Bezos owns the Washington Post. Let's not forget that. And but suddenly they're crying.
The Washington Post said, Carter, the Washington Post said that the fact that his money bought the Washington Post, it doesn't affect the things that they write about. Okay.
Oh,
they fact checked that.
I withdraw.
So this is fake news, sir. Okay.
Oh, I see.
Get it right.
This is a false narrative. Sorry.
Yes, exactly. This is very dangerous to our democracy for you to even suggest that, Carter. So
yeah, I can't believe I fell for that.
Yeah.
If they say, then yeah, I mean, so this is the kind of headlines we're seeing now, and we're seeing these people. You know, it's always this kind of crap, right? Where they're like, they find some dude, and you know, maybe there's probably a bunch of dudes like this, but they find some privacy experts. Okay, so we found some privacy experts who don't like it, including some dude from Harvard. It's a disaster for user privacy. The former professor and author of The Age of Surveillance Capitalism, Shoshana Zuboff, said huge ad revenue and unregulated data collection about user behavior have changed the social media industry, which now holds incredible sway over real-world events. That's true. That's true. I don't understand how a board of people is a lot different than a guy. Like
it isn't.
But apparently it is to them. Yeah. Because content on social media platforms can influence public opinion and lead to changed behavior, she said, the people in control of the sites have a tremendous amount of power. Yes, that's why he's offering to buy Twitter, because they've been misusing this power. Sorry.
I think Max Boot's response to it, I've actually got it pulled up here somewhere. Max Boot. Did you see what he had to say? Where he
go
said,
ahead and put it up if you have it, though.
I'll have to pull it up, but he just essentially said, in order to protect our democracy, capital O, capital D, you know, everything's dangerous, or that we need more control, not less. And I've got it right here. Just one second. I actually have I
think I saw that tweet.
I have a collection of responses. They're so good.
I've got a response from Mark Andreessen, and he deleted his response, but it was a stellar response. I don't know why he deleted it. He didn't want to be a wrong thinker. Here, let me. Unless you have it, I've got it right here.
I don't have it. Yeah, if you got it.
All right. I don't
understand I don't understand in any way how a private company access to that information could in any way more dangerous than the fact that the government has been surveilling us all for so long and they have actual power over everyone.
It's like Edward Snowden never happened.
Edward Snowden.
No.
It really is. Nobody was executed. Nobody was tried for that. Nobody hung. Nothing. But they violated the Constitution severely and just rolled on with it. It's not the first.
I'm having a real hard time understanding.
You keep breaking up, John. You keep breaking up. I don't know what's going on. Check your internet connection.
Yeah,
But I
give me a
think
little
what
better.
John was saying was nothing ever happened as a result of student leaks.
Well, Max Boot, for those of y'all who are not aware, Max Boot was part of a little project that went on in 2020 pre-election called the Transition Integrity Project, which was headed up by people like Donna Brazil, Max Boot, Rosa Brooks, oh gosh, I can't even think of his name right now. The evil Hillary Clinton's Podesta, John Podesta, all sorts of manner people, and they it was about 18 people in total. It was called the Transition Integrity Project. Also, Jeffrey Toobin, the guy who got caught masturbating on a Zoom call right around the same time as a lot of reports started coming out about the Transition Integrity Project. Yours truly writing about it, in addition to quite a few other people, where they were gaming out different election scenarios for 2020 and what they would do in the case of a narrow Trump win, a large Trump victory, and vice versa for Biden. And some of the solutions that they came up with, and again, these are some of like the key movers and shakers of like it was supposed to be a nonpartisan effort, but really it was 100% like a very like progressive like left group of people. And one of the options was if Trump won, for Biden to basically balkanize and claim claim like dominion over like California, Oregon, Washington State, push for DC statehood and Puerto Rican statehood, and to like basically exist within like two different Americas, which I kind of like think that would have been pretty cool if that happened. I wouldn't
awesome.
be, I wouldn't be mad about it, to be honest. I'm sorry that you'd have to live in like New Bidenfornia or whatever, but that was Max Boot was a part of that. He is honestly one of the most. He flies under the radar quite a bit. A lot of people just kind of dunk on him for his, absolutely inane tweets and hot takes that he puts out there. But like, this man is so entrenched in like the real establishment nitty gritty, swamp, so to speak. And I feel like it's never highlighted enough, but he seems to believe that on social media, anything goes. For democracy to survive, we need more content moderation, not less. That is just one of the most just mind-bogglingly contradictory statements I've ever read. And again, I don't think Elon Musk is a hero, but I am 100% embracing the chaos that is being brought about by his attempt to buy out Twitter. And I'm enjoying seeing all of the responses. And this is 100% just, it went into the Hall of Fame. I've got my big, database of just hot takes from people from over the years, and had a lot. They got added just the other day.
Do you have an entire Max Boot chapter?
I Max Boot is in there. Let me see how many times he's in there. I can pull it up really quick for you. It gets better with time, as I add more people to it and I add more takes in there. It gets better over time. I have from Max, I have 6 things that he said over time. I started working on this starting kind of middle of last year. So it's again, as new things are brought to light, or as I kind of go back through old troves, it's I can search through it by name, subject, time of date or topic, and then I have a place for the actual archive itself, because I don't trust anybody to just leave things up forever anymore. Things are deleted almost immediately. So I have the archive, and then debunks and rebuttals and responses and whatever. It's maybe it's too much, but it's great for me and I enjoy it. But Max Boot he's one to watch for sure. But I think the argument that people are making about Elon Musk having access to a significant amount of personal user data is so disingenuous, because when you really think about Tesla, maybe you've heard of it. When you think about Tesla and the amount of data that is collected on drivers on a constant basis, the amount of surveillance that is involved in driverless, not quite fully driverless all the time yet, but that's really one of the big valuations of Tesla. Is not necessarily the driverless vehicle technology, because there's companies like Waymo and Zoox and quite a few others that are they're actually significantly further ahead in the autonomous vehicle technology race. I mean, Zoox is probably one of the furthest along, but they get talked about the least. But Tesla already has cars in the market. is already collecting data. The amount of data that they're privy to of their customer base is so significant. And if you're going to raise alarms about anything, it should be something like that. The surveillance state that's being slowly implemented via like the adoption of full electric vehicles and all of the surveillance technology that goes along with that. But a database of people's phone numbers and emails that they burner phone numbers and old emails that no one ever checks anymore. I mean, truly,
well, it's a little more than that too. It's a little more than that too. All of the cameras on the Tesla as well, they have a camera on every side for the self-driving functions. That's how it functions.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
They record all of that footage. There's so much data.
I know, that's what I'm saying. But it's a very disingenuous argument. Again, I don't think Elon's a hero. I, in fact, am quite wary of him. I'm very wary of his ideas of abundance and of AI and bringing about the fourth industrial revolution. I'm very concerned with Starlink and Neuralink and a lot of other things. I don't think he's a hero. I'm embracing the chaos, though. But if we're going to be making arguments about Elon's access to personal data and encroaching on privacy, one would think that sort of argument would already be being made about Tesla, but it's not, because that's something that the government wants.
Well, and it's
among other institutions, of course. But I'm just a crazy internet person, so by all means, disagree if you'd like.
No, I mean, I don't disagree that they cherry pick what they complain about. Look, they're complaining about this because they think that it will resonate with some people who like Elon, right? They think that, oh, what if we bring up the privacy thing? But they didn't, they don't bring it up for anything else. As you point out, they don't bring it up for Tesla. They don't bring it up for anything else. They didn't mention like, hey, it's a problem that this small group of people at Twitter have all this data. Like suddenly now it's just a problem that it's
like once or twice a year. Once or twice a year, there's a massive database hack at Twitter regardless. That happened at least within the last year, where all of the verified accounts had to be shut down for about 24 hours because they were all posting Bitcoin links and people transferred a bunch of Bitcoin that got stolen. I mean, that happened on Twitter.
I remember the unverified days.
I think it actually involved Elon. Actually,
it was amazing.
I think someone had
his account did.
And then someone sent it Bitcoin, and he's like, "No, that wasn't me. Sorry, bro." Basically,
I want to say it was one of the first accounts they got.
But probably. The amount of pretending like people are guardians and champions of your personal data and privacy is laughable at best, and evil and disingenuous at worst. So.
Well, I think we're all a little guilty of that. What would be the right word? That when
apathy?
You idolize somebody that way, I think we're all a little guilty of that notion where we idolize somebody so much we can't actually picture them doing wrong to us. Recently, Trump talked about how if he was still president, the Ukraine situation wouldn't be happening right now. That's not really realistic, though. Trump took money from the same defense contractors that Biden did, and in the same amount. The three biggest defense contractors in the country, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and I want to say it was Boeing, donated to the Biden and Sanders campaign in an equal amount to the campaign. They were going to pay the people the same amount no matter what, and no one's really willing to doubt that he would have sold us out. But at the same time, he's entered the political game. He has billions of dollars. What does he have that's so virtuous that says he won't turn his back on us and won't betray us the way everyone else has?
I mean, I will say I don't think Elon's a savior, and I do think that one thing that's happening as we get as people become more anxious and under stress as the empire starts to collapse, it's comforting to feel like there's a savior. You want to look for someone like, and people did it with Trump. Oh, this guy will fix everything. And now people are doing with Elon. And like, oh, Elon will fix it. Elon will fix it. That he's going to be our savior. And I have a little bit more positive view of Elon than Elle does. In that, like, I do think there are heroic things about Elon, and I like him. I've grown to like him more over the past few years. I get that he wants to do Neuralink and all that kind of stuff, and like that's cool. But I like him. So I would call him heroic for his success in business. But I would be cautious to think that he's our savior. I mean, he certainly says nice things about free speech, which is more than a lot of billionaires do. And he makes he's making moves in apparently the right direction, which is more than most elites do. But he's not going to be even if this all went through.
It's a pretty low bar,
right?
To be fair,
yes, it is a low bar, but I think the issue is no one wants to believe that there's no one coming. No one wants to believe that actually there is no savior. You are going to have to suck it up and save yourself and your loved ones and actually do something moving forward to move the culture in the direction that you want. Everyone wants this to just be oh, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to keep watching my Netflix and Amazon and whatever and doing whatever. I don't want to pay attention. Trump will fix it. Oh, no, Elon will fix it. Oh, Ron DeSantis will fix it, or whoever. They want to just let someone be their savior. And I think therein lies the problem, because that's not a very American way to look at your life.
It's really not. And I think a large part of it is we have conflated some of the ideals that are the foundation of the free market and capitalism with some of the ideals that communism propagates. A lot of people think that working for one another, helping each other, actually coming together as a community to solve the issues is just an example of communism, but it's really not. If we want to make changes in capitalism, the best way to do that is to practice morality in our purchases. Stop buying goods that are made in China. Stop watching movies that are made by companies that make movies in China. Stop purchasing the things that support the people that are oppressing us to begin with. And that's a hard thing to do, but it's something that if the community as a whole doesn't come together to do, it doesn't make a difference. If 1,000 people do it, it doesn't make a change. It has to be tens of thousands, millions of people have to actually put in the effort. And that involves coming together as a community and saying, we need to work together because we have something in common. And this is an issue that we need to address with the people who are controlling our community right now.
Yeah. Let me read a super chat quickly while we have it up, because I don't want to miss it. I know, but it is related. It says this is from Johnny Boy Quick Draw. He says Twitter has become the de facto public commons where corporate entities go to get their marching orders from the mob. Control of it translates into socio-political power far beyond its stock value.
He has a point.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I don't think anyone would disagree with that here, right?
Honestly, I feel like Twitter might be purposely undervalued in that aspect by some individuals. They don't want to admit just how much money it's worth.
Well, Twitter is becoming a bit dated of a platform, to be quite honest. There, not many younger people are embracing Twitter quite the way. I would say people who are in their mid to late 20s and up are the ones who use Twitter the most. I'd say it's mostly people in their 30s and 40s and up. The younger people are on TikTok more. They even Gen Z widely kind of shuns even the idea of Instagram. That's even kind of seen as dated as Facebook is
more millennial.
Facebook is now MySpace, and Instagram is now Facebook, and Twitter is now it's kind of all shifting. It's all about TikTok and Snapchat. They're all back on Snapchat now, which I believe is also owned by Facebook, so it doesn't really matter. But
I thought they didn't sell. No, they're public.
Is it okay?
They're separate in public.
I was under the impression that they were bought, but I don't actually know. So by all means, I might be wrong on that one.
I'm gonna look it up.
But they're all on TikTok and Snapchat. They don't really embrace Twitter as much. It's usually when someone young comes onto Twitter, it's because their publicist or their business manager makes them do it. They tweet 2 or 3 times, and then whenever there's a new movie or book or something coming out, they'll hop on and be active for a bit, and then they dip out again, because again, it's all about TikTok and kind of more, at least. Twitter used to kind of give that facade of being accessible. It's not quite that way anymore. There's a lot of separation, and there's a lot of censorship, and there's a significant amount of that on TikTok as well. But it's different. That's where the young kids are. So this is a bunch of 30 and 40-year-olds griping at each other about how they're going to reach the youth when the youth aren't even really there sometimes, which I think is funny.
That's
they're definitely not watching the news. There was a I think it was Jimmy Kimmel who went after a couple of guys who have about 4 million followers on YouTube. They had Trump on. I think it was the Nelk Boys, something like that. They had Trump on their podcast, and then YouTube took down their video. And Jimmy Kimmel in his monologue for the opening of his show is like, some small podcasters on YouTube. And I was like, these people get more cumulative views on a very regular basis than your dumb show ever does. But again, there's a very weird defiance of old legacy media heads and figures who just simply refuse to believe that the platforms that they're clinging to and the media mediums that they're clinging to are simply just not going to be what is widely used and adopted.
Well, I think Twitter is a really good example of that, and the fact that they haven't adopted a reel format yet. Almost every other social media has a way to scroll through videos from your favorite content creators, except for Twitter. If you go to Facebook, you can do it. It's linked to your Instagram, so you can see people posting on Instagram and share them. And then, of course, TikTok, Snapchat. There's a lot of quick entertainment to that, and it keeps people on the app for a longer period of time. And the people who are in charge of Twitter just don't understand that practice. They don't understand that young people's attention span is shortened even more now than it was before.
For sure.
I don't disagree that there's an attention span problem, but I think, there is a general trend that Elle's pointing out, right? Which is that cohorts stick to their technology. So, you've got the people who grew up in college at Facebook will be on Facebook until they're 80. And at some point, Facebook will be the geriatric platform. Right now, it's like the middle-aged platform. And it's like, okay, right? And then, and the same will happen to Twitter, and the same will happen to TikTok, right? Like, I know that sounds weird, but in 10 or 20 years, it'll be like, oh, stupid 30-year-olds on TikTok. No one uses TikTok anymore. It's going to be whatever the thing is, right?
Well, TikTok is the new Vine. Yeah. It's just interesting to see the way things shift. I think that a lot of valuation is being put onto Twitter, where, again, while it is an important avenue of communication, it's really not the only one out there. But there are so many people whose entire existence only exists on Twitter, and they're the ones who feel the most threatened by this because they have been able to carve out their little spot as a big deal on twitter.com, and they're really, really afraid that if people are allowed to, push back on them or give them any sort of criticism, that they might have to actually do some, go through some personal growth and self-reflection, and that would be entirely too much to ask of people. So
that's not allowed anymore.
Those mean tweets. I mean, surely you saw Taylor Lorenz going on MSNBC, that girl who writes all sorts of hit pieces for Washington Post. She went on MSNBC crying about how people were mean to her online, and how it's just so hard to be a journalist. I was like, she's actively sought out. She's actually actively sought to ruin people over nothing before. I find it delightful. I feel like if people aren't calling me names on a daily basis online, then I need to step it up. I find it hilarious.
Not targeting the right issues then.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the reasons Twitter is popular is, the reason that Twitter matters is precisely the demographic, though. I mean, the demographic, so the people who are generally in control in a society are when they get to the 40 to 60 age group, they're not, they've lived enough life, they have enough experience, they started getting into positions of power at that point, but they're not so old that they're retired. And so, maybe it's 40 to 70 now, as people seem to be more active later. But there's that demographic is generally in a position of power compared to other demographics in societies, often because they're that ripe age where they're leadership and they have influence, and that also happens to overlap with the demographic of Twitter, right? So I think that's the issue. That's where they're talking to each other.
I think another issue might be the pace that technology is moving in the current time. Technology is just moving a lot faster than it used to. You look at somebody who's born in the 60s, they still had similar stuff to the people who were born in the 70s and the 80s. Things were different, but it was still similar, not drastically different, where they couldn't understand or figure things out. But then you look today, iPhones compared to what was here just 10, 15 years ago is a drastic difference in technology. So are computers, so are so many other things. So I feel like maybe it's a more stark image now we're seeing, where the older generations' technology older and more outdated than the current generations.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely haven't. It's hard. We're living through the equivalent of the Industrial Revolution, but it's the, internet revolution or whatever. And so you are seeing this kind of massive change really quickly, and All right. Well, let's kick the. We didn't even talk about Ukraine. We can put that on the back burner, and if someone wants to talk about Ukraine, we can do it. But Elle, I'm going to go back to
Ukraine.
You. What?
No, never mind. Go ahead.
What about Serbia?
I could take
I'm going to ask Elle, what's the most important story that she thinks the mainstream media is misleading people on right now?
Well, not necessarily. Well, it was certainly misleading at the time, but one that kind of has blown over, which I thought was just an incredible display of how it all falls apart so fast. Y'all might have heard of a woman. She's the governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, right? And remember back in 2020, there was this whole big convoluted plot of right-wing extremists to kidnap her and kill her or something, right? And it was all pushed on. It was inspired by Trump, and they were taking their marching orders from Trump. And it was, again, what could be worse than January 6th, a fake domestic terror plot. And so that all kind of started to fall apart in court over the last week. And I feel like that has just, again, there's so much other stuff going on. There's the Elon thing. There's, of course, Russia and Ukraine as the ever ongoing nonsense. There's now, Bill Gates is writing op-eds about how he wants to, develop all sorts of new things. There's so much going on in the world, but I feel like that was not highlighted enough. And so that's something that I've been kind of focusing on and embracing a little bit, was the kind of the false plot falling apart. Cause our 3-letter agencies are really they're getting, they never were all that good at meddling in domestic and international affairs, but I feel like our 3 letters are just getting kind of sloppy. And I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Because that whole
you want to not find out that they're
that whole
no, I think they just got worse at lying to us.
It's a poor attempt at sarcasm, but I think it's just really funny. This is why they want to control social media so bad, and why they want to control the according to quote Max Boot. We need more content moderation, not less, in order to strengthen and bolster our democracy, because these sort of plots start falling apart right before our very eyes. And a lot of people were calling this back when the story broke, back in 2020. People are saying this reeks to high hell of glowy fed nonsense. And of course, you were called all the names, the conspiracy theorists, right-winger, Trumpist, yada, yada, yada. But it's all falling apart. I mean, 2 men were acquitted. 2 others, they're angling for a retrial, I believe. And it turns out that there were, federal agents embedded within that group. Remember the guy that was, I can't remember his name, but remember the guy who sat outside DC with a bomb in his truck and was like, "I'm here for you, Joe Biden." That just went away in 6 hours or less.
Oh,
do you remember that? Remember
why did that go away? Was he not there for Joe Biden, or was he fed?
So if I actually have I have the full copy of that video. I got it because it was getting wiped from all corners of the internet. if you go back and listen to that guy in particular, this is of course unrelated to the Whitmer kidnapping plot, but he says that he keeps repeating how he and a few others all have bombs in DC, and I'm like, okay, well those are all the feds that he thinks that he's there with, and so it was just like one mentally ill man and like 6 other feds. He has like three raccoons in a trench coat pretending to be a terrorist plot. But these things they're fall apart like as they're being established in the the public eye, and I find it hilarious and frustrating and aggravating and all sorts of things all at once. I've stopped letting myself get just super angry about things anymore. I find these things hilarious, and the Whitmer thing falling apart, I think, is one that the very, very long answer to a not terribly complicated question. I think that's the one that I've been enjoying the most, and what I feel like hasn't been talked about enough. Not that it's not been talked about, but it's just...
I haven't even heard about it down here in Florida.
What? Oh, you haven't?
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the power of it. It might be the talk in the local community, but it might not reach anywhere further because they're limiting it.
So it wasn't just that like 1 or 2 FBI agents were involved. It was like
multiple.
Large, like
yes.
It was like 50% of the people. It was like a large percentage.
I think it was more than half.
Yeah,
entirely too ridiculous. Much. Like where we be funding our own crimes half the time, and it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I'm not sure if you two have ever seen the video of undercover police attempting to arrest other undercover police at a drug meet where they set up to sell one of the drugs. It's the most ridiculous
I have
thing
seen that
on the internet. Yeah. Where is my tax money going? Where is all of my tax to that? That's what it's going towards. Ridiculous things. But it brings up a point, in my opinion, from a recent article I wrote. With social media, they can control narratives today that with so many cameras around, if they didn't have control over, would be disastrous for them. In 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin incident was absolutely faked by the Johnson administration. Audio logs that were released later showed that not only were they assisting the South Vietnamese Navy in attacking North Vietnamese locations, and the first attack was retaliatory fire for that event, but that the second attack didn't happen at all, and that they fabricated it to both Congress and the press. Nobody knew about that until the audio logs came out over 40 years later. And by that point, nobody who was involved faced trial. 5 million people died in the Vietnam conflict, and nobody was held accountable for it. Nobody faced treason charges whatsoever. Defense companies made a whole bunch of money off of it. And in today's time, with all the cameras, that's not possible unless you control the media in which the cameras are posting to at all times. And social media is the most common place. You see videos out of war zones that come out regularly, and then the media has to respond to them. Being able to control that to begin with is so important to them. It gives them so much value.
Yeah. I think you're right. And there's plenty of examples in history of, the thing is, well, there's plenty of examples where later on we find out that the conspiracy theory is true, or that the mainstream narrative at least was false. I mean, the most classic one that people bring up all the time is Walter Duranty's reporting on the Holodomor, and his being a shill for Stalin, and getting a Pulitzer and having basically no one argue with him. And if people did, they were dismissed. And now I think it's a little bit more complex now, because you can't stop information from getting out, but you can control the narrative, and you can try and say, oh, that's Russian propaganda, or that's this, or that's that, or whatever. And if you control the platforms, you can still direct the narrative, and you just have a few crazy people who see the truth. Speaking about crazy people who see the truth, let's put this article up that Elle sent us.
Well, these were just a couple of different... just some more updates on it, and some more details on it. That was the original article that was from April 8th. I mean, this was only 10 days ago, and I feel like so much time has passed between then and now. And so I guess this wasn't within the last week to cover your question, but then
whatever, close enough.
But I just feel like it hasn't been revisited enough. And then the second one I sent to you, it gets into it a little bit more, and talks about how it was an informant, FBI informant, had driven the men to the warehouse for the meeting, and that at least a dozen informants had infiltrated the Wolverine Watchmen. Were like this great. I mean, it was. I mean, I'm not saying it was literally all feds, but the amount of
This
undercover
sounds fed, boy.
It's so ridiculous. If you go down to where it says bomb plot, I think a little bit below that, you'll see the kind of more details about this.
On October 7th, 2020, 1 month before the presidential election, 6 men associated with the militia known as the Michigan Wolverines were arrested in a sting outside a warehouse in Michigan. Blah, blah, blah. An undercover FBI informant had driven the men to the warehouse, tricking them into thinking they were going to make a down payment on explosives, picking up military gear, and then head to Buffalo Wild Wings for beer and chicken.
Who bought this plan?
If anyone ever invites you to Buffalo Wild Wings after talking about how much you hate the government, it's clearly a fed, because no one in their right mind goes to Buffalo Wild Wings. That has to be like some sort of
I don't
that's
know
like a piece to the puzzle. I ate there within the last like 2 to 3 years, and it was actually awful.
I can believe it.
Well, I look, I mean, bad food aside.
This stream is sponsored by Buffalo Wild Wings. I'm just kidding.
Look, the sad thing here is there are, in any population, there are going to be some crazy people or some people who are willing to do bad things, but without the resources and also without the social. So humans are social. So if you're the only one running around saying maybe we should do blah, 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 and everyone around you is like, you're fucked up, man, then maybe that doesn't ever happen. You don't ever do anything. There is no domestic terrorism. There's not a problem. You're just a rambling person. But the FBI like surrounds you with yes men who are like, yeah, and do you want to know how to make a bomb? I bet you don't know how to do that. Want some more resources? You're 100% right. You totally should do this bad thing. And like they're creating domestic terrorism where it doesn't exist.
Or you have situations where domestic terrorist situations get reported to them and they just ignore it. Like the Majority Stone Douglas High School shooting in 2018. That shooter was reported 17 times to local authorities and the local FBI. Nobody did anything. They let that shooting happen. And there are other instances where social media companies like Facebook recently, they were criticized because the Azov Brigade and other white right-wing neo-Nazi groups in Ukraine have been using Facebook to recruit people and have been posting attacks on Romani people onto their Facebook. Meanwhile, Ukrainian officials are claiming that the attacks never happened, but they're actively able to use social media in local region to recruit more people to engage in this behavior. And it seems like the governments are encouraging it because it helps them in the chaos.
Yeah. I said this previously, and I don't know if I've articulated it well, but I'm going to say it again just because I've been toying with this idea that in the past, in like pre-Enlightenment era, you basically had the biggest thug would win, like the Genghis Khan wins, or the king that's the most victorious and can defeat the most land mass, his army that does the best job, they win, and they get to be in charge and they control everything. But the war has changed. That it's the same. We're actually in the same situation, even with the democracy. But the tools of the battle have changed, and it's not the person who can shoot the most people or control the biggest army, but it's the person who, or group of people who understand how to manipulate the mob the best. It's I guess a good analogy would be sorcerers who can like use magic words to conjure mobs of pitchfork wielding angry people to do whatever they want, to do their bidding. And if you have a deep understanding of human psychology and can control the narrative en masse, and you understand how to get an entire population to do something and believe a certain thing, you're in charge. That's the power that you wield isn't an army or whatever. It's a bunch of zombies who you can manipulate with propaganda. And I think elites know that. I think the elites know that.
They do. All they need to do is polarize people to the point where they feel that if they do not stand in solidarity with the current thing, which is kind of the meme, going around right now. But I support the current thing. That if they don't stand in solidarity in support of the current thing, then they are everything that they've ever hated, and it's a way to identify who's on board and who's not. And a good example of this, actually, this is another thing I talked about this on my show on Saturday night. A woman who I think probably quite a few of y'all are familiar with, who I first started writing about at the beginning of last year, Leanna Wen, who is she used to work for Planned Parenthood. She used to be the health commissioner, she was a health.
I thought I recognized her name.
Of Boston. I don't. Maybe it's a health commissioner, public health official of some sort in Boston. Before that, worked for Planned Parenthood for a while, and now she is the medical analyst and contributor at CNN. She has regular guest spots on CNN, MSNBC. She's the one who went on to Cuomo Primetime on, I believe, May 11th of 2021, and gave the whole. If people aren't vaccinated and things are opening up, then what's the carrot going to be? You have to. People are going to go out and enjoy freedoms anyways without getting vaccinated. And she tweeted out just a few days ago something. She is still very much the tyrant that she always has been. However, credit where credit is due. She does seem to be undergoing just a smidgen, just a little smidgen of personal growth, where she said that since Omicron, the latest, well, it's not even the latest variant of COVID anymore, but the latest variant at the time, since Omicron, her opinions on COVID have changed to the point where she says that if someone is fully vaccinated, they should be able to live their life and not have to worry about, they should be able to make personal decisions for themselves. Obviously, it's not nearly the
low bar, as Elle would say.
It's a very low bar, but it is very different from her saying, you were never safe. The vaccine doesn't make you safe. We still need to she was 100% full on tyrant and has since changed her tune slightly. But even that little bit of a change in her tune, people are just absolutely have no idea how to handle it, because they have had it browbeaten into them for the last 2 years that if they don't fully support medical tyranny and lockdowns and endless mandates and the encroachment on personal liberties and banning from public places, in support of protecting people against COVID, then they're evil. And so the mental breakdown that people are undergoing just to see against Leanna Wen has been fascinating to watch. And you see it all the time. It's very interesting just how demoralized people really are, and how they've put so much of their identity into things that aren't even really relevant to them, that now that they're losing the thing that gave them an identity for the last 2 years, it's quite jarring, and for most people it's very uncomfortable. So
I know some people recently their employment stopped the mask mandate within the employment, and some of the people have absolutely not handled it well. They haven't just not stopped masks, like they avoid people at times, got to keep the 6 foot distance, won't
there's people that are still full on playing Pandemic, who haven't left their house in 2 years, which is just sad.
See, I'm in Florida, and that's so mind blowing to me.
I mean, they created this monster, though, right? So Leanna, has helped had a hand in this, right? They created a monster of neurotic authoritarians, and just like any monster you create. I mean, this happens when any leftist revolution, for example,
govern me harder, daddy.
Well, but you're also the one that's up against the wall and shot first thing as soon as the revolution's over. And what's happening is she's like, oh, I kind of want out in this tiny little way. I kind of want a little bit of return to normalcy. And the monster she created is like, nope.
Well, Greg over on YouTube in the comments says, is it personal growth or a survival strategy when all of her authoritarianist calls come back to her? And you're I think it's both, to be quite honest. That's another thing that I've been noticing lately, is anytime anybody who has, for the last, particularly within the last 2.5 years or so, who has become an absolute monster, expresses some sort of statement or thought that makes just a half of a lick of sense, people are like, oh, is Bill Maher becoming based? Is Trevor Noah finally starting to get it? It's like, no. They're alienating everyone. They realize how alienating they've like, and they need to try to appeal to a broader base again. It turns
It was never
out
about the truth for them. It was a social decision,
yes,
and it's still a social decision, is what you're saying.
it turns out if you call everyone, hillbilly Nazi inbred like idiots for like to like it turns out that eventually they'll get the point that they're not wanted and will dip out on you. But I find it so sad that we have so few people to look up to, which I'm not saying that you should be looking up to media personalities at all. I'm not saying that at all, but we don't even have really a whole lot of options for entertainment or for voices of reason, or people that we can at least trust that they're trying to do their best to get us good information. And so when someone makes like just says something that's not completely outrageous, people are like, are they finally becoming based?
Right.
It's like, no.
Right.
I'm so sorry that this is the only options that you have.
Well,
but no, I don't. For Liana Wynn, I think it really is just you're seeing the systematic walking back of some of the most hardcore, tyrannical opinions being held, and she actually wrote back in 2013. Liana Wynn co-authored a book about medical authoritarianism, and in it she talks about advocating for patients and against a concept called cookbook medicine, where in her own book she says, and I can quote it to you. Give me just 2 seconds. In her own book, she quotes the idea of cookbook medicine, which is that doctors follow a very specific, if A then B, one size fits all kind of policy. And she again advocated for it back in 2013. Then she started getting awards and started appearing alongside a lot of big political and media personalities. And then she took public office, and then that whole tune kind of changed. But while she does have a very questionable history, she has history with the Rockefeller board in China. Her dad worked for the World Journal, which is a Chinese state media entity that is published around the globe. It's obviously, I mean, it's not like our media is any better, but again, her dad worked for World Journal. She worked for the Rockefeller. If you go to SomeBitchToldMe.com, which is my website, and just type Liana Wynn up in the search bar, I did a whole deep dive into her, and you can see everything I've dug up on her. But she wrote a book back in 2013 about like advocating against the exact thing that she then went on to advocate for. So I'm rooting for her. But I don't think she's quite there yet. I think she's expressing, again, the whole stipulation for her still is that she can do all of this, and she can make her own personal choices because she is vaccinated and boosted and does all the things. So again, that's a qualifier that I fundamentally disagree with, but it is interesting. But I like words over action, or I like actions over words. So we'll see.
I think we've seen a bit of a change in the overall narrative surrounding COVID and some of the more authoritarian policies that were in place, largely in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. I think they're concerned about the division amongst the populace, because we kind of see it seeping over to some of the discussion. You see some people who tout images from like the massacre in Bucha, and then you'll immediately see people who oppose them in their views, claiming that these are false images or that the narrative's fake and everything. And we created such a polarization during COVID that now that war's here, those who are in charge are a little bit afraid we won't come together and stand behind them in the war so they can make all their money off of our taxes. Because that's what this is going to come down to. They're going to make a whole bunch of money selling Ukrainians and other nations that get involved weapons. They'll make billions, trillions of dollars like they did in Afghanistan. 20 years will go by with doom and gloom, and nothing will actually get accomplished. Nothing will actually change.
I say that tax evasion is patriotic.
Oh, tax evasion is patriotic. I think what's not is when we drop $1
You need to
trillion
say
in
avoidance, L.
Afghanistan.
Otherwise, sorry, go. I just don't get in
For
trouble.
for legal reasons, this is a joke, and I wish I could pay more taxes. I think the government's very good with their money, and I certainly think that they like. This is what it all breaks down to. Do you really think? And I know that everyone, I know everyone here sees it, but do people, honest to God, think that these people in charge of these institutions, or who at least act as the face of the entity that's in charge of institutions, whether or not they have people behind the scenes pulling their own strings or whatever, do you think they're actually all fighting over who gets to take care of us the best? You think that's what this is all about? You think they're really fighting over their love for us?
Oh
No.
no. It's
No,
a stage.
no.
They're fighting over how to write the play and make it look good while they take all the tax money. That's what it comes down to.
You think Pelosi and McConnell just fight, day in and day out over who gets to take care of the American people the best?
Oh no, at the end of the day, it's
No.
Can I get
No,
you a
no.
John,
drink?
I interrupted you when you were saying something earlier, John. Sorry about that. I wanted to make sure Elle wasn't getting herself in trouble illegally.
Yes, I want to pay more
absolutely.
taxes. Thank you for correcting me.
What I was saying about Afghanistan, we spent $1 trillion over 20 years in Afghanistan, and that government collapsed in 2 days. Nothing got accomplished. All the people that died, over if I want to say it was over 500,000 Afghani civilians died in the conflict, well over 5,000 U.S. contractors and over 2,500 U.S. soldiers died in the conflict. And what got accomplished? Nothing got accomplished. $1 trillion got spent, but where did that money go? Well, it went into the pockets of the same people it always goes to. It went to Lockheed Martin, it went to Boeing, it went to Raytheon, it went to all the companies that profit off of war. And as soon as that conflict ended, they shifted to the next play at hand. They shifted to Ukraine. This time, Russia's the bad guy in the conflict. They got to put it up for the world stage and make it look good. They even picked a bad guy who, if they have to execute him, he's already lived over 70 years. What does he actually care? Nothing he's doing is going to impact his life 10, 15 years from now. So he doesn't care at all. And that's what it really comes down to. They're going to shift a whole bunch of money out of Ukraine and into the pockets of companies that work in the countries in Russia, in China, in Serbia, in America, in Europe. And we're not going to do anything about it again. 10, 15 years will go by and we'll finally find out how corrupt it was. And then all the people involved will already have passed away, happy, living great lives.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the things that's sad about this to me, I mean, there's a lot of things, but one of the things that's kind of from a holistic long-term perspective that's sad is the cost of this stuff is not something that's readily apparent to most people, right? So when you say, oh, they spent $1 trillion, okay, well, that $1 trillion it'll probably be $2 trillion when you add the interest on for whatever was loaned to the government for this. And then a part of this is going to be through, I mean, there's 3 ways they get money. They tax, they take loans at interest that your grandchildren pay. Maybe we'll never pay, but at least we'll owe. And then they inflate the money, which hurts everyone, especially people who are on fixed incomes and the poorest among us.
Oh.
And no one thinks, it's hard to imagine. I think a lot of people just are missing imagination. It's hard to imagine what would life actually be like. What kind of standard of living would we actually have if these parasites didn't constantly drag us down? Because you know what? War's not productive. The Keynesians can go to hell. Breaking windows isn't productive. War's not productive. These things are not productive. You know what's productive? Producing things. Growing vegetables in your garden and selling them. Growing cattle on a giant farm and selling them. Writing code. Like doing things that are like making a video, like making art. These are productive behaviors, and that's what raises the standard of living. And nothing the government does is productive. The government only impedes production and then funds destruction. Sometimes it funds production, but it does that by taxing other production more than the cost of funding it in the first place. So it's a net negative. The government doesn't produce anything. And the idea that, like, the sad thing to me is we throw these big numbers around, like they spent this $1 trillion and they did this and they did that. And now what have we I think we're like 20 trillion now, 20 something trillion. I don't know what
almost 30
now.
It's
Okay,
isn't it 27 trillion, I think now?
It's just a number that people are like, it's just blown away. It's even bigger than BlackRock, by the way. Blown away. And no one can imagine, like, hey, you can't see in a visceral way how your life would be different if this shit hadn't been going on for the last 20 years.
Oh yeah, well, I mean,
you might have a much higher standard of living.
Imagine $27 trillion invested in infrastructure instead. Imagine $27 trillion being available to the people who paid it. Last year, Elon Musk paid $11 billion in taxes. Yeah, Elon paid $11 billion in taxes last year. We know that $11 billion is going to go to bombing somebody someplace else. At the end of the Afghani pullout, they mistook a man transporting water home for a terrorist and bombed him and his family, killing children involved. That's what they do. They take $11 billion from people who actually create things. Elon might not be the best guy out there, he might not be, but he is making stuff. He's way more productive than anyone there is. They took that $11 billion from him and they're going to turn it into destruction on the other end. And to me, that it seems so pointless to pay taxes at this point. There's no real purpose because the government's not going to accomplish anything.
Yeah, and I wasn't criticizing Elle for saying, I would just, avoidance. You can say tax avoidance, tax evasion is technically a crime. She left. Tax evasion is a crime. Tax avoidance is legal. You can avoid taxes by not making money, for example.
I clicked wrong button. I'm sorry, that was my bad.
No, that's right. I was just saying, I was just explaining, Al, that I wasn't criticizing you. I was just trying to
I'm furious. No.
Oh yeah, for a sec I was like, damn. No,
I just don't know how to work a computer most of the time. That was 100% my bad.
I bought a laptop for this. I usually work off my phone.
Oh, well, I'm glad that you did. Let's read a super chat. This is about someone, I think it's about the bomber that you brought up earlier, Al, or the alleged bomber in DC. This person says he was 100% a Fed. There are pictures of him from years ago on an operation.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. No, the second article, actually, the one that I linked to you, yeah, the second one from Covert Action Magazine. You should read that one after you should read that one. It's a good read and has a lot of good hyperlinks to kind of where these people come from and what they've been involved in. It's great.
Right. I'll read it after the show. But yeah.
There's so much like our three letters are everywhere. They're ubiquitous. I mean, and I think that's kind of one of the things that I am embracing about the whole Elon Musk Twitter debacle is like is the kind of highlighting how entrenched our government and three letters are in with our social media companies. And it's something that we've all kind of known already, but it's kind of being brought back to the forefront because they don't want, there are multiple agreements that have been undertaken in many different instances. There's the World Wide Web Consortium and the Contract for the Internet, which upholds the tenets of the SDGs, which are the Sustainable Development Goals that were designed by the UN, which is a contract for the Internet to basically to protect people, to limit harmful speech, which is of course a very nebulous term on purpose. There's also organizations such as this is a new. There's the GIFCT, which is something that I've recently been made aware of. It's the Global Internet Forum to Counter Terrorism, which was founded originally by none other than YouTube, Twitter, Microsoft, and Facebook. On June 26, 2017, Twitter, Facebook, Microsoft, and YouTube announced the formation of the GIFCT. They created it with the belief that by working together, sharing the best technological and operational elements of our individual efforts, they could have a greater impact on the threat of a terrorist content online. Building on the work of initiatives such as the EU Internet Forum and the Shared Industry Hash Database, they identified three core areas of work: technological solutions, research, and knowledge sharing. But they also were using databases that already existed that were provided by entities such as Five Eyes, such as the FBI and CIA databases. And so like there truly is this hugely entrenched and deeply overreaching power that social media platforms have. When Jen Psaki said, it was like in the middle of last year in either June or July, she kind of alluded to the idea of if someone was banned or deplatformed from one social media platform, that there should be some sort of kill switch where they could be taken off of all of them. And I think that this sort of like the GIFCT and these agreements have been put in place, that's what they're setting it up for.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And if you watch my show, which I'm sure most of y'all don't, but that's okay. We've been talking about
you should go watch your show, everyone.
The adoption of the metaverse.
Gotta love the plug.
Well, I mean, hey. We've been talking about the metaverse, and the ultimate adoption of the metaverse won't be something that people are going to do willingly, but it will be adopted via work. I mean, there's Workplace by Facebook already. Plenty of people. I used to work at a company that used Workplace by Facebook. It's now Workplace by Meta. This sort of adoption of these technologies will be something that's just integrated into the corporate structure, because now it's not about just trading your experience and your time for money at a job. You have to, you have the core philosophy of wherever you work, and it's hardly has anything to do with the service or product that you provide anymore. It's about, creating a better place and upholding equity and et cetera, et cetera. And you're also kind of expected to uphold those company core values by working there. And that's it's all of these things, like they're all ever encroaching, and there's so many different moving pieces to it. And I wonder what Elon's ultimate plan is with all of this, because again, I think he might be challenging something that exists, but it might be because he's been excluded from being a part of it, because he's been very vocal about his being excluded from the contracts with the government for electric vehicles. I feel like it might be his way of getting back over that, rather than, again, I don't think he's a hero, but whatever.
Well, there could be some bitterness over the whole metaverse thing. Neuralink seems like it'd be perfect for the metaverse. It seems like it'd be the absolute greatest device to go into the metaverse when you go to sleep instead of actually going to sleep. Let your body rest, but don't actually waste the time. It seems like it'd be perfect, but Zuckerberg and Musk are kind of on the outs. He's on the outs with the government in a lot of ways. Maybe he got pushed out of that option and is a little bit bitter, is trying to throw a wrench in things. Some people say the same thing about Trump. Trump got pushed out and laughed at when he brought up the birther conspiracy, and that's why he decided to make a run for it and throw a wrench in things.
If y'all want to check out my show, it's twitch.tv/Ellis for the way. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let me post it in there. Jeez.
It's on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night.
For the way. Hold on.
It's mostly just me ranting about stuff, but sometimes there's good content there.
Hey, Lewis Black got paid a lot to rant.
Well, we don't have that in common, but I'm doing my best.
I don't know. Maybe I'm naive, but when I
think anybody pretending to have all the exact right answers is someone that I don't trust. I think like the best thing that you can do is say these are kind of my running theories, and upon learning or taking in like new information, they're subject to change without warning at any given time, and that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, no, I think really that's fine. Yeah, I mean that's correct. That's what a rational person does. But I guess I'm saying maybe I'm naive about Elon. Like he is saying, I care about free speech. I want this to be a free speech thing. He's throwing out ideas. He's not sure how to do it exactly. Like, maybe I'm being naive, and maybe
low bars,
yeah,
Carter.
A little bit. I mean,
but it's free bar.
But I mean, look, compare.
Let's.
Yeah, but compared to the other elites, no one cares. No one at his level cares about free speech. No one. Right?
Sure.
It's a low bar. I agree. It's a low bar.
No. And hey,
I mean,
I would be happy to have my, hunches proven wrong. I would be nothing would thrill me more than to be wrong about this one. It
Right?
doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, and it is what it is. But I don't like him.
Don't you always want? I wanted to be wrong about Biden. Like I wanted to be wrong about how this would go. I knew how it would go, but you wanted to be wrong about it. You wanted to hope that all the things they were saying they were going to do that were good things that they were actually going to follow through on. Like when they said they were going to fix our refugee issues, when they said they would commit to trying to improve the refugee problem, then they started turning away Cuban and Haitian refugees because their voting demographic doesn't align with the Democratic Party completely. It's ridiculous. They violated a core part
First
of
of
their
all,
platform.
Snopes said that's why they were Snopes said that's not why they were turned away. So
Snopes said it was turned away for
I would
COVID,
thank
but
you
then
to go make yourself familiar.
but then like a month later after that, Biden was like, but we're going to bring in 100,000 Afghani refugees and fly them into the country. We're going to turn away the guys that are showing up here on their own in their own boats, but we're going to pay to fly some other refugees in because COVID's not that dangerous that we can't fly people in. It's just too dangerous for these one peoples down here that we're going to have to turn away.
Well, everyone knows that COVID contagiousness depends on what your demographic is likely to vote for. I mean, I think that's been proven scientifically.
Well, that's so. Did y'all see
I'll do you one better.
Started deporting Venezuelans? I'm sorry.
No.
The Biden administration in June started deporting Venezuelans back to Venezuela. For people who aren't like real acquainted with their situation down there, Venezuela's been committing 6,000 extrajudicial murders per year. That's 6,000 murders without trial, just executed. That's more than the United States has committed, but they have a population the same size as Florida. And the people that are fleeing from there cite that as a reason not to be sent back, which is a legitimate refugee reason not to be sent back. But they're still getting deported now. Meanwhile, refugees from other nations like Guatemala are able to stay. And it's not that the people shouldn't be able to stay. Everyone should be able to stay that's a legitimate refugee. It's just this strange choice to pick and choose between who gets to stay and who gets sent away. It reminds me of the if you don't vote for me, you aren't black comment. It feels like if you don't vote the way they want, you don't get help. And that's not right.
But
it's almost like the Democrats are the real racists.
Oh, isn't it though?
It's almost like there wasn't a great switch.
The great switch.
Stephen Landau points out the fact that we're picking our favorite billionaire to determine our free speech discourse demonstrates the utter collapse of the system. I'd rather have Elon than Zuckerberg or Dorsey, but that's not pretty well said. It is a problem. I want to say something that you earlier on you said something about I think you were talking about Leana Wen or whatever, Leana Wen, and you were talking about I forget the phrase you I'm
rooting for her.
Well, I forget the phrase you used, but it was something
not
like
optimistic. What's that? Oh, sorry.
Recipe, like color by number medicine or whatever. I forget the phrase you used, but it was
cookbook
like,
medicine.
Cookbook
That's her
medicine.
phrase, not mine. Yeah.
Okay. I was thinking about this, and one of the reasons that we have cookbook medicine, I think, is we no longer have a relationship with our doctors as customer and healthcare provider. There are large entities, the government being one of them, in between our relationship with our doctors and us. And so doctors, their customer is kind of like the insurance agency, but the government's also involved in regulation and mucking with the market. So whereas in the olden days, your doctor would show up at the house with the black bag and you would know the doctor and you would have a relationship with the doctor. Not that we should go back to that exactly, but you would have a relationship with the doctor.
Cocaine.
Right, yeah.
Hey now, the days of legal cocaine were days I want to see at least a little bit of.
Yeah, but but what we instead we now have doctors are part of this giant administrative bureaucracy, which fundamentally changes the nature of the relationship between you and your doctor. And so they are playing the numbers, right? They're doing cookbook medicine because cookbook medicine on average works out better for the administration
Well,
than actually taking the time to be with you.
Is that a flaw of capitalism there? I mean, that
I don't think anyone could possibly make an argument that the medical industry is so not capitalist. I hate when people do this. I'm not picking on you, but like, hey, this highly regulated industry that the government has spent like a century destroying, isn't that a failure of capitalism that it's not working?
No,
like,
no. The idea of achieving the greatest profits, because when you look at the system overall and you see a highly regulated system, but then if you break it down to the hospitals, what are the doctors worried about? They're worried. The chief of medicine's worried about generating profits in his hospital.
But that's not.
They're
capitalism.
worried about driving.
Profits and capitalism aren't the same thing.
You're right, but
like
being profitable is a core part of capitalism.
When people say real socialism hasn't been tried, neither has real fucking, pardon my French, but free market capitalism. Again, when you allow for absolutely zero market competition, when you over-regulate and allow for these extremely long patents on things that truly shouldn't be patented, and when you allow for the secret and hidden fees and non-transparency in the billing process, and when you then create bloated government programs like Medicaid and Obamacare that don't actually focus on the bloated spending, but just throw more money at it, that becomes increasingly, or I guess decreasingly, like holds so little value these days. That's not capitalism. It never has been. It never will be.
Oh no, make no mistake. I do believe that it's not, the current system is not free market capitalism. What I'm saying is the reason we have gotten to the point we have is because, like we were saying earlier, people won't practice morality with their capitalism. We got to where we are because the people who used to make money when it was less regulated, they wanted more money. So they started putting more regulations in place because it allows them to hold a monopoly. Regulations are the greatest gate for a monopoly. You keep out the regular people. No regular person can get out here and be a doctor and prescribe medication on a regular low level. You have to spend thousands of dollars, go through the certification process. And that creates those barriers that they're creating through regulation are beneficial to the largest people in the game, and it's a part of greed. They want more money, so they see the possibility to make higher profits by using the government as a cudgel against all of their competition.
Right. So what I see what you're saying, and I'm not pushing back on it. I am kind of pushing back on it, but not really. You are citing an issue with humanity. Humans want more. Not everyone is going to be moral. And in a free market, they can't do anything about it. Now, in an environment where you can bribe the government to rig the playing field for you, absolutely, some people will get the government to rig the playing field for them. We can talk about doctors from the very beginning. The AMA are the first evil group to do this. Now, of course, we can blame the AMA or we can blame the politicians who decided that who the fuck cares what the Constitution says, we're going to do it anyway because it's for some greater good, which I would prefer to blame the politicians who actually do the thing. But, of course, the AMA was upset that people could go out and prescribe drugs. They didn't have to prescribe. People could go out and buy drugs. You could hang a shingle. Elle could hang a shingle. I'm a healer. And you could go to Elle's house. And she'd be like, well, you should take a little bit of cocaine and a little bit of heroin, and that will make you feel better. And like, she's right.
In fact, you might not feel anything at all.
That's right.
I've cured you. You're welcome.
That's right.
Stay up.
Yes, we do an amputation at the neck, and you're feeling all fine. Whatever it is, but Elle hangs her shingle, and she says she's a healer and whatever. And they didn't like this idea. So they pushed for licensing medical schools, and they pushed for a pharmaceutical industry where we're like, well, only these people who have been to these kind of schools, that they get this certificate that's approved by the state, gets to write a prescription for these kind of drugs, which can't be sold by anyone else, and blah, blah, blah. This whole thing was to limit the number of people that could prescribe cold medication, basically, right? It's to limit the number of people that could sell drugs to you. That's where it came from. That's where it came from. And so, like, you can blame the fact that humans are greedy. I'm putting greedy in quotes. Like, sure, people want more things, and people are greedy, and some people will do immoral things to try and get it. But the fundamental problem is giving them the gun, which is the government. Like, I get that you want me to not be able to sell my tincture, but you shouldn't be allowed to point the government's gun at me to make me not sell the tincture. And that's where the problem lies, because you can't solve the problem that some people are going to want to do that, but you can take away the ability to do that, which at least was the intent of the U.S., which maybe didn't work. That was a long rant.
But
it was a good one, though. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, definitely a 10 out of 10. Loved it. But let's look at the opioid epidemic, and there is an issue of, if there isn't a proper regulation on the manufacture of drugs, you have a lot of overdoses from impurities. That is an issue we see in the black market of cocaine. There's been a long time argument that if we legalized cocaine, we could pull out a lot of the impurities and smuggling and make it just an overall safer product for people to utilize and cut down on deaths. And the same thing made with opioids, the same argument. So there is an issue. We can't have a totally free market with medicine, but then can't have, because we'll have individuals making these impure medications that are highly addictive, that get sold and peddled and kill millions of people.
Is that not already what's happening right now?
Yeah, that happens now.
It is.
I mean,
it is. Hold on. Let's
talk
but
about
only
cocaine.
Because we have illegalized substances like cocaine and heroin. All these drugs are legalized on such a low level because they're so overregulated. But there needs to be some level of regulation at the same time. We can't just say, well, anybody can sell highly addictive materials on the streets legally and not be at fault for people dying from the impurities.
There was a time where I have very mild scoliosis. It is painful every now and then, but the curvature is never enough for me to warrant actual surgery. I was kind of right on the cusp of it, but I never wanted to actually. Once you undergo any sort of spinal surgery, you're going to be doing upkeep and maintenance on it for the rest of your life. But every now and then, the most recently, it was a couple of years ago, I sneezed, and like the entire left side of my back, like the muscles spasmed because there's a bit of a compensation for the one side, the curve on the other. So I sneezed, and all those muscles I crumpled, and it was like I was in significant amount of pain. This happens every now and then, and every time it does happen, I have to. Well, I don't really go to the doctor for it anymore, but when it used to happen, I would go to the doctor, and they would offer me all sort of manner of painkillers that an 18-year-old to 22, 23-year-old girl had no business being offered for a very temporary amount of severe but manageable back pain. I was looking for like the Tylenol 10 or whatever, or maybe like a Tramadol or two, but like what they would offer me like opiates and things like that. And so you're saying that like that's already legalized.
Hold on.
There's
what I'm saying is what they prescribed you though didn't kill you the first time you took it, because we do have regulations in place that make sure there's not impurities in those things. There's an issue of we have to legalize certain substances and keep proper regulation on them, because when they're made impure and they are given to people who may need them, may not need them, that is an issue of greed a lot of the times.
Okay, so wait a minute, John, I'm going to ask you a question.
There have been like breath treatments for COVID that have been recalled recently because of shards of glass in them.
And I'm not saying that the regulation process is perfect. It's deeply flawed is what I'm saying. The process we have right now in our current system is deeply flawed. We need one that's a little more mixed and balanced on the regulation for medical problems, because we still need some, but we have far too much in certain areas to allow certain people to make profits.
Maybe we can have a regulation on broader argument some other day, maybe, because this could be a long one. But I do want to just make one point, which is
smoke weed.
I don't.
Yes.
The reason that people don't poison me when I buy a burrito at Taco Bell has nothing to do with regulations. If I went to
It's
CVS to
bad
buy
for
my
business
cocaine,
to poison your
right?
burrito.
Yeah, if I went to buy cocaine from CVS because it was available, and there were news reports that sometimes when you buy cocaine from CVS, it kills you because they don't give a crap. CVS would never be able, like, it would go out of business. It wouldn't happen. Just like elevator safety regulations do not protect me from the elevator failing. Elevator companies couldn't make elevators that sometimes fell and killed everyone. No, they would go out of business. No one would buy elevators like that. It's ridiculous. The idea that the government is necessary to like, hey, if we don't have the FDA, they might poison you with the drug. I'm like, well, I guess they could get away with doing that once, but basically no one would ever buy anything from them ever again. And there probably would be seals of approval that are like private industry kind of things. Like, hey, CVS would say, well, if we're going to sell L's cocaine that L grows in her backyard, we're going to hold it to standards, and we've got testing, and we're going to make sure we have a quality control process because we don't want our brand associated with L's poison cocaine. So, like, the idea that the free market couldn't sort this out and that people would you don't get money, you don't get rich by killing your customers. It just doesn't happen. Never in the history of ever do you get rich, except when the state's involved and you're making bombs. Then maybe you could get rich.
Or you had all the red tape removed in the development process of a mRNA vaccine, then the government gave you a bunch of money for it, and you're not financially or legally responsible for any of the subsequent recurrent lifelong myocarditis and other things that result from it.
Well,
the government would never do anything like that ever.
To speak to that, though, isn't that kind of the issue? They will happily, for greed, give you a product that harms you as long as they can control the narrative around it. With drug dealers on the street, no one cares about the narrative around it. No one cares if their customer died tomorrow. I can get another customer tomorrow.
Yeah, they do. Are you kidding me?
Somebody else. I can sell crack to 100 other people on the street. Drugs are a guaranteed product. A lot like marijuana. There are some products out there that people will buy no matter what. And cocaine, meth. Nobody thinks when they're buying cocaine and meth in the dark alley behind CVS or Walmart or wherever you're buying it, that this is clean, that somebody has gone through this and this is going to be safe for me to take. It's always a gamble, but people will still happily go and buy it all the time. And if they find out somebody died from it,
that people buy now.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with the fentanyl thing, people do care because fentanyl is starting to be mixed in a lot of drugs, and fentanyl is very, very deadly. And so people are trying to care. And the frustrating thing is, if you did want to go buy a drug right now, there is no way to go. You can't go to a legitimate source and be like, hey, I want some cocaine, but I want to make sure it's pure. And is there a test that you can set? Like, show me how it's pure. You can't have that conversation within the black market because they'll be like, well, like, where else are you going to go? There's no competition. Black markets suck. So, like, if you want purity, you have to have a white market. Like, you have to have a white market where people can have that conversation and say, like, well, you know, how do I know this is pure? And CVS can convince you that L's cocaine, in fact, does meet their standards for purity.
Make no mistake, I fully advocate for like a transparent process to it. It's just there does have to be something that we as a community do agree that we hold with certain medications, addictive substances. We hold a standard for how they'll be produced because of how addictive they can be.
We can have this conversation. We're gonna go in circles. And I want to talk about some other stuff that's more important right now. And also, by the way, I got it totally wrong. Someone in chat said L has a poppy field, so you're not growing coca leaves, it's poppies. So sorry about that, L. I didn't mean to misrepresent your product. We have a couple people from chat asking some things, and
the FBI is at my door right now. I'm just kidding.
Right. Someone is asking about.
They're not that efficient.
Gonzalo Lara gone missing in the Ukraine. I don't know. Do you guys know any?
Isn't that the journalist that went missing recently? I've been very skeptical on following a lot of the news out of Ukraine because I trust neither side that's allowing news to come out at all. Anyone that's able to go through the country, take photos, and then report out about it is clearly being allowed to do so. So I'm very skeptical of all reporting that comes out of the country.
So you guys don't know this. I don't know this story either. I don't know who Gonzalo
I could look
Lira
into
is.
it and write about it like later on today. But I other than
I can look into it right.
My knee-jerk reaction is, oh, that sucks, but I don't. That's about all I got.
Well, the Daily Beast, the thing that shows up when you search, and we all trust the Daily Beast because, I forget why. They say how a sleazy American dating coach became a pro-Putin shill in Ukraine. So apparently Gonzalo Lira is a pro-Putin shill. And a horrible, horrible person. But I don't know. According to Daily Beast, I don't know anything.
Doesn't tout.
Who's the shill? The guy who's missing, or?
I guess this guy's missing. Gonzalo is missing.
So he deserves it.
Yeah, he's a Putin shill, so the mainstream media doesn't care because he's a scum Putin shill.
Throw him to the wolves for all we care.
Did either of you
the Daily Beast probably?
Did either of you see the report on the gentleman who was shot after negotiating with in between Ukraine and Russia? There was apparently an agent who was allowed to sit at the negotiating tables who, shortly after negotiations in March, they shot him without any trial or anything, and then tried to represent it as he died. Yeah, it was a very bizarre story. I want to say I have it on my phone. 1 second.
He probably wasn't wearing a face mask.
It was
in danger.
Yeah, if he wasn't wearing a face mask, I'm 100% behind this murder.
Yeah.
I mean, he was probably killing grandma. Yeah, there you go. By the way, a simp
never
says,
feel like
can you get Elle on every week, please? I just want to throw that out there. So you've got a simp that loves you, Elle.
I love you too, simp.
Oh, gotta love it.
Sorry, go ahead, John.
But actually lost what I was thinking about.
Love you, mean it. I, honest to God, have not been paying attention to Russia and Ukraine for a good,
it's so hard
like 2 weeks.
It's been a couple weeks for me. I got tired of it because we were talking about it all the time. I like finding out about who's reporting on it and where the money's coming from on those reports and what's being said about the reports, kind of like the stuff that I talked with you about last time, like the Digital Forensics Lab, where they're like, we should be creating and propagating propaganda to galvanize support, and the government should be helping, says our Atlantic Council. But, you know. It's okay that it's not true. It's useful.
And they literally were like, like this at the time of the topic was like the ghost of Kiev, and they were saying how it was, even though it was all fake, it was good for morale and it should keep going. I remind you that Adam Kinzinger, who is just as dumb as he is ugly, which is both, he tweeted and then quickly deleted, but the internet is forever. Tweeted then deleted a picture of none other than Samuel Hyde in the cockpit of a jet. It said it was the ghost of Kiev, which I think is honestly like the peak of the Russia-Ukraine discourse, and I don't think it's going to get any better than that. If you don't know who Sam Hyde is, he can't keep getting away with it, and you should learn. But oh man, I honestly I should probably like tune back into it, but I've been focused on metaverse and tech stuff, and I can't. There's no solid sources. Nobody's objective, and my forte tends to be looking at things retroactively, even if it's just a month or two out. It's usually when people start getting sloppy with their kind of making sure that they tied up loose ends. So as far as what's happening currently, I don't know.
I feel you. I
wish I had something better to say.
Well, the gentleman I was talking about, his name is Dennis Kareev, and he was shot by the security service of Ukraine. The SBU is what they're called. They're nice little 3 letters. And shortly after negotiating on behalf of Ukraine with Russia, they shot him. And
who shot him?
Cited,
the
SBU did.
I've seen this article.
That's They didn't give direct details on the specific agent involved in the shooting, but they claimed he was shot while being taken into custody along with 2 other individuals. But they cited phone calls apparently with Russia. The point is, though, they've shot a man without trial
for treason.
Yeah,
Apparently,
for
that's
treason.
what it says.
And I've never met the good guys who shoot people without trial ever at any point, especially the treason trials and spies. Those are the things you want to be able to try. Like if you captured a Russian spy, you want to capture him. You want to put him on real trial publicly and make it seen that they are engaging in disinformation, engaging in covert activities. But that's not what happened. They shot the man. And that makes it seem like they are the bad guys in the situation. I'm very skeptical of the whole Ukrainian government because of their actions.
Yo, I think that I too think that the Ukrainian government just might be a little corrupt.
Somebody in that same
individual
in chat said unofficial reports are that the Azov Nazis were either captured, they captured or killed Gonzalo Lara in Kharkov. That's not exactly unlikely. The Azov Brigade is a highly active unit that was cited for beheadings in separatist Ukraine. And that's something the media is not talking about, is what Ukrainian government agents were doing in the separatist areas. They were using cluster munitions in 2014. They were using illegal weaponry, committing beheadings, rapes, all sorts of things that were documented by Amnesty International. But now it's made out to be that Russia is wrong for aiding the separatists. Both sides might have alternative motives, but without a doubt, it's not wrong to help the people that are being beheaded and attacked for not wanting to be a part of another country anymore. And it's mind-blowing that the media is willing to do that. If this was Palestine, this would be entirely turned around. Ukraine would be evil. They'd be the oppressors, the invaders. So it's stark.
It's weird how a region with clear, like if you look at any of the history, I'm not an expert, but I did spend some time looking at the history after when this started. If you look at any of the history on both sides, there's clearly a lot of nuance and weirdness and corruption and problems, and just there's a lot of nuance to this. And as soon as there's the war, it became Manichaean. It was like Putin all bad, Darth Vader, Ukraine all good, whitewashed. We whitewashed everything about Ukraine, and everything about Russia is bad, and that's the entire narrative, and you can't have any nuance at all. And frankly, I think it makes it hard for. I don't really know what to believe, because I don't believe that Russia is not pushing propaganda. Like, of course they're pushing propaganda. So, like, I've like two people serving me propaganda. I'm like, I don't know. Like, it's really hard to know what to believe.
My question is, and maybe this is a hot take, I don't care really, because it is what it is. Why should I care about Russia and Ukraine? Aside from the fact that I'm being made to care.
Before the conflict got to where it's at now, there wasn't a lot of reason to care, but now that it's where it's at now, there is some concern about what it's going to do to the global power scheme if we back down at this point.
I don't know. I assume when Elle says, "Why should I care?" she means as an American citizen.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I care about like humanity, broad strokes, like, deeply. I care about people. I hope that generally speaking, people are doing all right. But to pretend like the history of Russia and Ukraine and post-Soviet states, that there is not more than just 3 months of history that adds up into all of this, and that Ukraine is not really just it's all just bullshit the way that it's been presented. And I find myself having to care because our government's involving itself. But and
Well, I mean,
people starting petitions to create no-fly zones. Like, oh, thank you, Emily, for your petition trying to start World War III. I really greatly appreciate your addition to the global political landscape discourse. It's very useful. But I don't know enough about it to speak terribly intelligently on it, and it would take, I don't know, probably a year or two at least to even for me to really study it and like get to the point where I'd feel comfortable talking about it, because there's so much geopolitical history and ongoing, like there's too much there to be able to form some sort of hot take on all of this, in the span of a few weeks, and so I just haven't been doing it.
Well, I mean, I think, but there's some validity to having a principled position, which is, I care about America because I'm in America, and I'm an American, and I don't see a compelling reason why we need to be entangled in any of these foreign wars that we seem to be entangled in constantly. And if you want to make a humanitarian case for why certain people should be helped, fine. Private charities can do that. People can do that. Like, that's fine. But that's different than the government being involved. And, if you go back to the founding fathers, they warned of foreign entanglements. They specifically warned about Europe. They basically said, stay the F out of Europe. They have nothing to do with us. They have their own stuff going on. We don't need to be there. And I think you'd have to make a really, really compelling case for me to say, like, why it really, really matters that American resources and America officially is involved. If Americans want to be involved, if everyone in LA wants to like round up a bunch of AR-15s and send them over with some Subway sandwiches and like that's how they want to help, then fine. If they want to go fight, that's fine. But to entangle the state and to say the state has to be involved in this, that's a little bit much.
Well,
and I think you have to make a strong case for why that's in the U.S. best interest.
I feel like the reason it might be in our best interest to involve ourselves in this conflict at this point is because of Taiwan and China. This conflict is being viewed largely as Russia and Ukraine and Europe, but in reality, what we're seeing is a proxy war to start a Cold War between China and America. They're seeing how we are going to respond to a large superpower invading a small sovereign nation that needs our help to defend itself. They want to see our armaments. They want to see how we'll group together, what the morale for our people will be like. They want to see how deep our pockets can get because they want to invade Taiwan. And the reason we're so committed to Taiwan is because they produce roughly 98% of the world's semiconductor microchips, which are used for everything from our laptops, the microphones, the phones, everything we use. If they were to invade right now, it would devastatingly cripple the world market. And we've kind of seen already, you see the price of cars going up. That's largely in response to a shortage. And that shortage came in response to companies like Apple, Tesla, Ford buying mass amounts of semiconductor chips, anticipating an invasion from China in Taiwan. And this really seems to be their setup for it. They're really testing things out. They're now flying weapons to Serbia, which is an EU candidate, but for China, an open ally of Russia, to be sending weapons to an EU candidate, it's very unlikely that Serbia will do anything in a response aggressively towards Russia, including vote against them in any type of resolutions. So it's really concerning, and we have to kind of take this issue now, because if we don't, we're going to see a lot more conflicts with China moving forward, because they're going to feel they're free to act on the world stage however they want to.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think anything we do will stop China. When they want to take Taiwan, they'll take Taiwan. I don't think they care. And I also don't think that we need to be the world's police. Like, there was a change in the world power structure. That change happened when the Soviet Union collapsed. And what we didn't do was allow there to be a change. Putin even has said, he suggested, hey, maybe we could join NATO. Like, nope. NATO was an anti-Russian thing, and we're going to keep that going, even though even though the Soviet Union has disintegrated, we wanted to keep this rivalry going in a way that wasn't necessary. And I personally just don't want the U.S. to be the world's police. Like China's not. Well, China is stupid right now anyway, but China is not doing their. They don't have. They're not trying to put boots on the ground anywhere right now. I mean, they've been fighting an economic war. They've been winning the economic war. They will continue to fight and win the economic war because we're crumbling and they're not. And like that's the reality of the situation. So I think we are going to see a world where China and Russia, whether they're allies or not, at least China is going to be a much bigger player on the world stage, and we're going to have to get used to that. Like I don't know how us fighting in Ukraine does a damn thing for Taiwan. I mean, TSMC, yeah, they make 90% of the chips or whatever, but you know.
Well, here's a part of it. If China really didn't care about us, then they would have already invaded Taiwan. They want Taiwan badly. They make public displays of aggressively pursuing actors and celebrities. Like, for example, John Cena made the comment that Taiwan was a country, and they made a very public display about it. They want that nation, but they haven't taken it yet. But also with the comment about boots on the ground, with India, China has been encroaching the Indian border for a few years now, and they have recently been involved in a few skirmishes with the Indian military where they've tried to reestablish where the Chinese border is. They're trying to expand slowly, but there's a deep fear that if they make aggressive plays to expand, then it will push nations like India, like Pakistan, and the other countries that are fearful of America for its imperialist behaviors during the Bush administration. They're fearful that those countries will start shying away from them and moving away from them altogether. But they've already made comments of supporting Argentina's claim to the Falkland Islands over Britain. They are supporting Russia in Ukraine, and they deeply do want Taiwan. There would be no need for a propaganda campaign if they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, but I think they've always wanted Taiwan, and they'll take it when the time is right. But it's not, as Stephen points out, the shortages and inflation have nothing to do with Russia. They began long before the war. Yeah, they're COVID. Most of these are COVID shortage. China does have a Belt and Road Initiative to get, which does affect India. But I don't see
how'd that work out for Sri Lanka.
Right.
That's topical that no one's talking about.
Oh yeah.
Okay, talk about it.
Well, I mean, as you mentioned, there is the Belt and Road Initiative in China. I've written quite a few articles on it. It's one of my first things that I dug into. Belt and Road Initiative is a way for China to create all sorts of manner of infrastructure, whether it's there's canals, railways, all manner of infrastructure in other countries, and will be repaid to China kind of on like a loan basis, depending on the country. And it allows, it's a way to kind of foster trading routes and relationships where there weren't before. If you look at, for example, the relationship between China and Ethiopia or the Tigray region, which is where the Director General of the WHO, Tedros Ghebreyesus, is from, in Ethiopia. If you look at the initiatives there and then the people who, kind of rose up out of that, it's very interesting. But Sri Lanka, let me pull up a little reference here, but Sri Lanka just declared like the equivalent of bankruptcy.
Yeah, they said it wasn't going well for them, this Belt and Road Initiative.
Well, to be fair, quite a few things are not going well economically for, not just, Sri Lanka, but China between 2006 and 2019 invested about $12 billion about $12 billion in Sri Lankan infrastructure, which is actually really funny reading this now. This is a article here. I'll share my screen one moment, please. It's funny because this is from 2020. It's the Belt and Road in Sri Lanka beyond the debt trap discussion, where they go on to say, that it's not that Sri Lanka was not a Chinese debt trap. The 12 billion was only about 6% of their GDP, and Sri Lanka has a general debt problem, and they owe a lot of their money not just to China but to international financial markets and the World Bank, which we all love the World Bank.
The World Bank debt trap. Where's the article about that?
That's a whole different that's a very big conversation for a different time. But Sri Lanka has just declared bankruptcy. One moment. I'm getting a lot of feedback in my headphones. 1 second. This was just like yesterday or the day before. They are, as of April 12th, let me pull this up. As of April 12th, just a few days ago, they're suspending all repayment of external debt. They're a preemptive negotiated default informed to all creditors. Interested creditors can claim outstanding in rupees, which is not just for Zelda anymore. I mean, I know that that's like a currency, but it's interesting. New credit facilities and any amounts dispersed under existing credit facilities after the 12th of April are excluded and will be serviced normally. The finance ministry says move only as a last resort to prevent further deterioration of Sri Lanka's financial position will help source essential imports. Sri Lanka is just kind of falling apart. Long story short. And the Belt and Road, while maybe, according to that, it's not a Chinese debt trap because it's, the IMF and the World Bank is involved as well. It's almost like there's a global banking system that seeks to subvert the will of the population of different countries, and that governments are beholden to rather than to their their electorate. But that's again another conversation for a very different time. But
that will be a fun one. I think we should have that one. Yeah, that will be a fun one.
That's a we're getting canceled after this one kind of stream, but it's important.
But those are the best kind of streams, aren't they?
I've been canceled like 12 dozen times. It doesn't matter. But I was going to make this point earlier about just Russia and all. If we've known for so long how awful Russia is, then the same people that are now claiming that it's just the worst thing ever. I would point to Uranium One. I would point to the long-standing history of seeding American infrastructure, our uranium mine. They at one point controlled about 20% of the uranium mining in the U.S. It's I think down to a little bit less than 2% now. But at the time, about 20% of the uranium in the United States was controlled by Uranium One. Those kind of things. You don't make deals like that with the devil, but maybe you do. I don't know.
Well, there's something there. I think you brought up earlier that the Democrats are the real racists.
I was being 100%
sarcastic. No, I'm being very serious on this issue though. In 2020, Russia bombed hospitals in Syria. They bombed 4 separate hospitals. They killed civilians. They hit a bunch of people.
Yeah, we did that
terrible.
Too.
Yes, we did. But in 2021, when Joe Biden entered office, he lifted sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. That was in response to brown people getting blown up in Syria. When the situation moved to Europe and white people became the source of the threat, a lot of people on the left and in the Democratic Party really jumped to save this issue. But there's been none of that for the last 20 years while we bomb the unholy death out of every location. In 2017, Trump gave control of the coalition forces to Saudi Arabia, and they started bombing school buses in Yemen. They killed over 30 children in a single strike where they hit a school bus that was in a marketplace for no reason. Nobody cared. Nobody made any change. But now that we see this issue has moved to Europe and is threatening Europeans and European interests, the left has hopped to it to declare that these things are evil, that they're wrong, that they need to be persecuted. And it seems undoubtedly like there might be a racial bias amongst some of the people on the left about this issue, at least amongst Joe Biden. I have no doubt with some of the things he's voted for and said in the past, like the 1994 crime bill, his voting against busing, his repeated use of the N-word in the Senate. The man has racial bias himself, but it seems like the people around him and the other people in charge on that side are letting it show really heavily right now with their decision to really try to save Europe.
I'm not. I do believe, obviously, that the Democrats have a history of racism, and there wasn't a great switch. And hey, Hillary Clinton was buddy with Robert Byrd. I mean, there's plenty of pictures of them. She eulogized him. Yeah. But I'm not convinced. I've heard this argument before. I'm not convinced that the interest in Ukraine is racially motivated. I would be more interested. I'm more likely to think that it's motivated by financial and corrupt entanglements that make us care about Ukraine. I could be wrong, but we've been meddling in Ukraine for a while. We clearly have a lot of, we'll just say, definitely corrupt ties to Ukrainian companies and Ukrainian politics. So it affects us more directly from a foreign policy and also from a deep state perspective. The deep state cares. Like their guys are there. It's their sandbox much more than Yemen is their sandbox, right? Yes. So
I mean,
I would assume that that's what the reason is.
Yes.
But yeah.
I don't get me wrong. I think the financial ties we have to the area definitely play a role in it. But then you have the situation like Africans in Ukraine, where the Ukrainian people were purposely excluding African people from attempting to flee. And then after that was brought out and it was shown that those people were fleeing to the border in cars, you have neighboring European countries that started turning away refugees that were coming at that point. But then you also find out that the Ukrainian government is employing neo-Nazis and that they've been engaging in attacks on the Romani people within their nation. And it's not that I believe that all of the concern from the left is a racially motivated concern, but there does seem to be a few individuals who are in high positions that are definitely more invested in this situation here than they've ever been anywhere else, despite decades of financial investment in the areas. I mean, we spent a lot of money in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Yemen, Saudi Arabia. We dumped a ton of cash there. Libya too, but we were fine bombing those places back into the Stone Age. But now that it's moved over into Europe, there's a distinct change in our reaction to it. And I think some of it, not like I said, not all of it, but some of it has been a racial reaction from the racists that are in power.
Well, I will say also, people in Ukraine, people don't realize how racist a lot of Ukrainians are, and a lot of that part of Europe is. Like, it's not a. We want to think that everything is like, I feel like there's a bunch of leftists in Seattle that are like, Kyiv is just like us. Like, no.
They forget those people
they are not.
They accepted German rule for a time period during the Holocaust. Like, there were people who were happily willing to go along with those plans that grew up in the culture of that area. And it's not like the culture of the area just inherently changed overnight because Russia gained control of the Ukrainian area following World War II. It's still the same people from Russia. I mean, Russia has a documented history of being rather brutal and genocidal towards minority groups within their nation as well. So the culture hasn't inherently changed in the region.
Elle, you look like either this is all bullshit and you want to call us out, or you have an ulcer.
Maybe it's both. No, I'm not quite sure I agree on any of this, but it's like, it's fine. I don't really, it's not that I don't, it certainly is an interesting point. I think that I disagree with it, but it's no big deal. It's not really worth like arguing it out, in my opinion. I think that whether or not there's a racial bias at the root of all of this, or I don't think it actually matters, but it's an interesting point. And again, maybe I don't know enough about any of this to really speak terribly intelligently on it. So that's my take.
It's all good. I realize
That's all I got.
realized we have been keeping you guys here. It's over 2 hours, so usually we like to wrap up at 2 hours. So I feel like I need to wrap up. But before I do, I want to give you each an opportunity to just give some people some advice on, like, how do you recommend people do ascertain the truth in this modern deluge of competing narratives?
You want to go first, Sam?
Sure.
No, I'll go whenever.
Well, inherently you have to trust your stomach to a degree. If something smells like it's fake, you have to dig into the sources behind what you're looking at. You have to start looking into the people who are writing what you're reading. If you read medical papers and some of the information you're hearing just sounds like it's wrong, then you need to definitely look into the person who wrote the paper. You always need to double check any source that you're going to use to cite anything in that regard. You have to make sure that you know it's genuinely what it is. You can't post an article that you think is citing the information you want, and in reality, the article cites another article, and that other article doesn't ever actually cite a verified source whatsoever. There are some issues where you'll find in mainstream media where you'll click on their source and it'll take you to sources that aren't real sources at all.
Yeah. Elle, thoughts?
What was the original question again? Sorry.
How do you recommend people figure out the truth? Amidst, like, basically you're being swamped with competing narratives and an overload of information. How do you figure out what's true if you're a normal person who's not going to devote their life to what you do?
Well, it's counterintuitive to what we're doing here, of course, but something that I try my best to practice is when something, some sort of story is currently breaking, or if there's something happening, rather than immediately jump onto social media to see what other people are saying about it, I will at least try, and this is something that's quite easy to do, and it's a very interesting thing to try out for yourself. Read a couple of things about it and then come to your own sort of conclusions and ask yourself how you feel about it, and then go see what other people are saying about it. Because oftentimes, if given the chance, without shaping your own opinions of a certain narrative with other people's, you'll find that you might defer quite a bit. And that's not necessarily a way to find out the truth, but you need to find out what you think first, rather than what other people are telling you what they think. If that makes sense. That's not put very well, but I think you kind of get it. And again, yeah, like my kind of catchphrase tagline for a long time was "cite your sources" or GTFO. And as John was saying, yeah, for sure, you definitely want to go to primary sources as much as possible. But as we all well know, that's not even necessarily a good rule of thumb anymore. Trust no one, not even the people that you think that you should. I don't trust anybody at their word anymore, and I'm constantly trying to challenge my own thoughts and beliefs to actually figure out if I actually do believe something or think something, or if it's something that's kind of been programmed there. And it's more about doing personal audits on your own cognition than putting your trust in any one single source. Because as long as you can practice discernment and, kind of sniff out who is or isn't being genuine with you. Anybody who pretends to have the answers all lined up nice and neat for you in a nice little package is someone that I wouldn't trust, to be quite honest, because they're trying to either put on some sort of air that there's something they're not, or they're trying to mislead you for one reason or another. Just good general rule of thumb. But I don't know if that's very good advice or not, but listen to your gut. That's all I got.
No, I really like her advice right there. It was great advice. I changed some key perspectives that I was raised to believe in simply by stopping and taking the time to argue from the other perspective. And I think it's really important to challenge your preconceived notions. And she's super right about that. Great take, Elle.
And watch the Late Night Elle stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Elle is further away. It's Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night at 10/9 Central.
And catch out wrongspeak.net. We produce great content, great perspectives from different point of views.
I'm biased, and I admit it. Bye, everyone.
Well, thank you both. Appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Elle, and John. It was a pleasure to talk to you for the first time.
Yeah, it was fun.
Absolutely.
So,
have to do this again.
Yeah, we definitely have to do it again. Maybe we'll get into, I don't know, Serbia, or we can argue.
Let's talk about the central
we
banking
can
cartel.
talk about abortion.
Oh,
we can talk about all the interesting topics.
Ooh, and the central banking cartel. Ah, yes.
We
could definitely.
That get us canceled episode.
That's okay. That's all good. So anyway, thank you both. As a reminder to everyone, our next show is Rebel Civics on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific, and then Dangerous Thoughts at 5 p.m. Pacific. But until then, have a good one, and don't forget to share this with
at least one friend.
One friend clandestinely is okay. That's fine.
Shoot for two. Shoot for two, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for sticking around until the end. If you're new to Unsafe Space, check out our deep content library that includes discussions with everyone from James Lindsay to Brett Weinstein. And please consider helping to fund our work by visiting unsafespace.com/donate. You can find us on a variety of social media platforms, and you can find a community of like-minded individuals on our Unsafe Space Discord server, which is open to financial supporters at any level. We hope to see you there.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production may corrupt previous psychological programming. If you encounter any of the following individuals, please administer government-issued neurotoxin immediately. I'm not sure what the neurotoxin will do because I am not a biologist. CRT is a complex legal theory that is needed to combat the epidemic of racist babies. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks of the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is fake news. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.